McCarter is our guest today, and I'm going to introduce him in a minute, but one of the things he's going to talk about is the fact that the American Revolution is something that is larger than one person, that would have been impossible for one person to do all by themselves, and that's Writers Week. It takes a lot of people working really hard to put this week together, and we do it for you because you are worth every minute of it. So here's Jeremy McCarter. Grew up listening to a lot of hip hop, just like many of you. He majored in history at Harvard. He spent 5 years on the artistic staff of the Public Theater in New York, where he created and ran the Public Forum series of performance and conversations. He served on the jury of the Pulitzer Prize for Drama. He is currently writing a book about young American radicals in World War I, which will be published in June, so you can look for that. Until that book is out, Jeremy is best known for co-authoring Hamilton, The Revolution, with Lin-Manuel Miranda. Nice to see there are a lot of Hamilton fans in the house. We do have a few copies of the book left for sale. They are $45, and Jeremy will be happy to sign those for you, or just to say hi and take a picture. So after this performance, we're going to be signing and saying hi out in the lobby of the auditorium because we have a new guest up for 6 hours, so just kind of know that that's going to happen. So please join me in welcoming Jeremy McCarter.
Yeah, Jeremy!
Hi, everybody. So are you Gina's class right there? Gina must be a good teacher. I don't know. I wouldn't cheer for my teachers when I was in high school. But hi, everybody. I'm happy to be here with you today. I want to have a sense, if anyone is stuck around from the last time, like, you've heard this, so I don't know. You could totally put on your headphones and listen to the show right now if you wanted to. But just so I have a sense, like, who has seen the show by show of hands? Has anyone seen it yet? So twice, show off. Who has listened to it who's heard the album? Like a lot of people, right? Who has memorized the album? Who can do Guns and Ships right now?
Devin!
All right, if I run out of things to say, we're going to do a sing-along. Right, so there's something interesting about this phenomenon, what just happened. Like, clearly a lot of people love this show who haven't seen it. But Hamilton's a play, which is something that by definition you're supposed to go see. Like, even a musical, it's odd to see its love, like, expanding beyond the theater this much. What I want to talk about this morning is something that I got to see over the last long time, years, of this phenomenon. How is it that people are falling in love with this show? What in Hamilton is affecting us as strongly as Hamilton is affecting us? And there's one obvious thing, I think, the fact that it's an album that so many of you listen to and love, is that, like, Lin is a genius writer of pop songs. I mean, those things, yeah. And those songs, they hold up on their own. Like, if one of them pops up in a shuffle with, like, other stuff that you're listening to these days, it doesn't sound like a musical. It doesn't sound like old-timey. Like Helpless comes on, and Helpless is like a great R&B song that happens to be from a Broadway musical. But the balance that Lin can strike is that in the course, even though it's a great pop song, the theatrical storytelling is so specific and so precise. Which is why I'm feeling, as you've been listening to this, even if you don't know, even if you haven't seen the show, I have a feeling you're not getting lost, right? Like, you can listen to it straight through and you know what's going on, which is kind of a crazy thing to say about the recording of a Broadway musical. All right, so how did the show exactly take over the world? If you want to know why I got to have this perspective on it that I got to have, the story actually starts a long time ago, in the spring of 2007. I was writing for New York Magazine. I was writing about plays. And as Gina said, I grew up listening to hip-hop. I listened to a lot of hip-hop. I listened to a lot more hip-hop than I went to plays or listened to musicals. That's still true, actually. But when I was writing for New York Magazine, it bothered me that this hip-hop, this incredibly powerful way of telling stories, this dense, intricate kind of wordplay, wasn't showing up around Broadway. Like, why was that happening? It's such a powerful way of telling stories, and Broadway wasn't copying to it. So I said in these essays, again and again over the years, like, theater needs to do a better job of using hip hop. And so then once you write that, you have to see, is this show that says it's hip hop actually like making good on what you want? That's why I went that night in 2007 to see this musical by people whose names I'd never heard. And within 5 minutes, I knew, okay, actually, here's the guy. Like, finally, here's someone who understands this stuff the way that I do. The show is In the Heights. It was Lynn's first show in New York. And I just knew this is someone who, in addition to having a great sense of hip hop and how I can carry a line and tell a story, can write incredible ballads, also has a sense of like stories that ought to be told. Lynn has talked about this in interviews. His family is Puerto Rican, and when he grew up, the roles that he saw available to people like him were not encouraging. I mean, they were like gang members, they were criminals. He didn't have a chance to see on screen, on stage, his life. So he had these characters that were parents and children. They were strivers, they were citizens. So already I'm impressed by this guy. I write this review that tries to explain why I think Lynn is a talent that we ought to be watching. And apparently when he read the review, he had the same feeling that I felt when I saw his show, which is this is someone who's thinking about some of these things the way that I am. So the publicist for In the Heights, who knew us both, fixed us up. And one night in the summer of 2008, after a performance of Heights, because he's still playing Mustafi at that point, we meet for a drink. And then we have another drink, and then we have another drink. And it's a pretty late night by the time we're done. And at some point in the course of that conversation, he tells me that what he wants to do next is to write a hip-hop mixtape about the life of Alexander Hamilton. Which, yes, giggle, I giggled. I mean, that's a crazy idea, right? Like the Founding Fathers rapping their cabinet battles to each other's faces is ludicrous. I still think that now, but I think one of the lessons of Hamilton is that the ludicrous ideas sometimes are the ones that change the world. I didn't remember much of that conversation, neither did he. It actually turns out like the emails we sent in the days afterwards when we sobered up are sort of how we figured out what had happened. But it turns out that night is sort of a pivot in my life, because now here I am talking about Lynn's show and the book that we wrote together. So you know what came next. Next was the night at the White House. Has everybody seen the performance in 2009 when Lynn, so I don't have to, yeah. So you know that President Obama invited Lynn to the White House to perform in this night of spoken word and poetry. And he was invited to perform a song from In the Heights. The show had won 4 Tony Awards. It was on Broadway. It's a no-brainer, right? Lynn says he doesn't want to perform a song from Heights. He wants to perform a song that no one's ever heard before. He's never performed it live or any other way. A hip-hop track about Alexander Hamilton. And to the credit of the Obama administration, they're okay with this idea. They even let him close the show. What I love about that video, that YouTube clip, is that it gives us an artifact, so that years from now, hell, even now, like when we take for granted that, yeah, there's this hip-hop musical about Alexander Hamilton and it won all these awards and everybody loves it, like, we know what it was like when people only knew the idea and they didn't know the hype. They didn't know that it was great and won all these awards. And you can see how people react to it, right? What do? They all laugh. Like, everyone thinks it's hilarious that he's gonna get up there and rap about Alexander Hamilton. He even has to say, don't laugh, because he's not kidding. So what happens? As he starts to rap and Alex Lacamoire, his music director, starts to play, it gets very quiet. People start listening. And by the end, they all jump to their feet and they give him a standing ovation. So those 4 minutes in the East Room that night in 2009, that has been what I got to see over 6 years. Just extended in time, of people sort of finding the show and falling in love with it, and extended in space because it's not just about like one room in the White House, it's about this big country of 300 million people, and I'm guessing other countries too, but certainly this one. We're sort of taking over the world. Then one other thing to say about that night, the one kind of audacity that it doesn't quite capture, or might not be obvious if you watch it, it's not just that he was deciding to, it's audacious that he wanted to rap about the Founding Fathers, but it's also audacious that he wanted to rap about the Founding Fathers. Right? The subject is as audacious as the way he wanted to do it. I didn't have this thought in time to put it in the book, but whenever I give a talk, I like to ask this question and see if anyone can answer it for me. It's amazing to me that Americans do such a lousy job of telling the story of the founding of our country. Like, when have you seen, this is a real question, when have you seen the events of Hamilton, the founding of the country, the Revolutionary War, Continental Congress, all those heroic escapades of the 1770s and 80s depicted dramatically? I mean, there are a bunch of books about it. There's one Broadway musical, 1776. There's the John Adams miniseries that was on HBO like 10 years ago. What else? And Hamilton, right, but aside from that, is that crazy? Like, now that we've seen it in Hamilton, like how dramatic the story is, fighting and affairs and betrayals and friendships and people shooting each other, right? Like, this is great drama, but for some reason, Americans haven't been claiming it and dramatizing it and giving ourselves a way to experience it imaginatively. So I want to just flag that now because I think that has a lot to do with this world we're living in now, where the hottest cultural property in the world is a hip-hop Broadway musical about stuff that happened 250 years ago. Is it 250? I think it's 250. All right, so Lin isn't thinking about that when he decides to write the show. Lin had just gone to Mexico with Ron Chernow's biography looking for something to read by the pool. But when he thought about it, the idea that Hamilton led a hip-hop life made him feel like inspired. And the way he described it to me is it left him feeling just super prego, meaning like pregnant. Like these songs are coming out. And the songs started coming out. So for the next couple of years, he starts working with his director, Tommy Kail. Tommy is an incredibly brilliant guy. And they start crafting this story, and they start making decisions. I mean, in a way, it would have been much easier for them to just do the mixtape, because then you just have to worry about how it sounds. Once you decide that you're going to put something on stage, then you start coming up with some pretty tricky questions. Like, what are the founding fathers supposed to wear? It's hip-hop, which is very contemporary, but it's about the 18th century, which is not contemporary at all. So like, what world are we living in exactly? You have to try a bunch of stuff to make this not seem preposterous when an audience is going to come see it. And this is a lesson that I want to leave you with from this whole process, something I got to see. One reason why I wanted to write the book is to show that even though it looks effortless now, like no seams show, it just seems totally like perfectly constructed and everything else, nothing was obvious going in. Nothing about this was foreordained. Everything that you like about the show, if you like the show, was a conscious choice that Lin or Tommy or one of their collaborators had to make. Or, in most cases, a decision that they had to agree on and make together. So a lot of those choices, those decisions that get made, that's happened in the phase of the show that I got to be around. I was very lucky to have access to. I had left the magazine business and gone to work for the public theater, which got some applause, by the way. I don't know if why that happened, but that's super cool. I was on the artistic staff in the public theater for 5 years. Part of my job was to bring in artists and propose projects for our seasons. The first artist I proposed to my boss, Oscar Eustace, was my friend Lin. He had done the song at the White House. 2 years had gone by and no one had heard anything else about Hamilton. I said, let's bring him in, let's find out what he's working on, what's going on. Oscar is a dear friend. I thought I would take the story to the grave, but he tells it. Then when I proposed this to Oscar, that he meet Lin-Manuel Miranda, he was like, nah, like he wasn't really feeling it. One reason was that when In the Heights won those 4 Tony Awards, it did so at the expense of one of Oscar's shows. But I stayed on him about it, and I said that we should have him come in, and then he said okay, and so I emailed Lin and told him that my boss was super excited to meet him. And so Lin came in, and they met, and they totally fell in love. It would take another couple years until the deal was done between Jeffrey Seller, their commercial producer of the show, and Oscar. Like, again, nothing was obvious, nothing was foreordained. But what it meant was I got to have a front row seat to watch all this stuff happen. And if people ask me, like, when did you know, like, what it was? Like, when did you know this was going to be such a big deal? It dates to the day of one of those first meetings with Oscar and Lin. Lin had brought a CD. Like, are there CDs anymore? Like an actual piece of plastic with music on it to give to me. It was his demos of the songs that he'd been writing for the show. Like 9 or 10 of those songs. And they're demos, so it's just Lin singing all of them. And I will never forget this day, sitting in my apartment in Brooklyn, listening to that on my laptop. And when I heard Helpless, again, Lynn singing Helpless, so it's Lynn in falsetto singing that song. When that song ended, I just knew, like, if he finishes this thing, this is gonna be the best musical of my generation. So that's the summer of 2011. So then we get to watch this happen now over the next couple of years. More and more people have this sensation that I talked about of falling in love with this thing that is not even quite finished yet. There are a lot of stages along the way. There's only one I want to call out today because I think it reveals something important about this show and what makes it special. In May of 2014, the company did its first staged workshop, which means after like standing at music stands and just letting Lynn hear the songs, now they're gonna stage the thing. There's gonna be blocking. They're gonna see how it looks when these people are moving around. And they're gonna be wearing costumes. Paul Tazwell's costumes that he designed for the company. So, Lynn and Tommy had not intended to like make some huge political statement when they cast their show. It's not like they sat there and said, I know how we can really like blow people's minds. Let's have people of color play the Founding Fathers. They thought, let's have the people who are best equipped to perform these songs, perform them. Let's ask our friends to come show up in a rehearsal room somewhere in Midtown and let us hear how they sound. That's how you end up with Chris Jackson, a black man from Cairo, Illinois, playing George Washington, who was a slave owner. This first workshop with costumes, when they staged it, was one of the most incredible moments I've ever had in a theater. The thousands of whatever things I've gotten to see. That morning, at the end of the Yorktown sequence, when the Americans win the Revolutionary War, our forefathers win our independence from the tyrannical King of England. The people who climb on top of the boxes and the stuff in the rehearsal studio to celebrate were, for the most part, people of color. In the costumes that we have seen our entire lives, the costumes of the Continental Army. And the charge that went through the room when people saw that, the juxtaposition of America now and America then, was like nothing I've ever experienced before. And there was this roar that went up. And as you know, there are a couple more songs and then it's intermission. And the lobby at intermission, this tiny little lobby, like there wasn't room for everybody to stand. It's just this kind of like, people were just kind of agape at how their minds had just been blown by this. Just because they didn't plan it that way to have that effect, doesn't mean it was an accident. Tommy said, from the beginning, he wanted this to be a story about America then, told by America now. And that's what we got to see that morning for the first time. I was not alone in feeling inspired by it that day because, you know, we went back to the public after that and like, we were all very inspired now because theater matters and look what it can show us about our country. And, but we were also like so jazzed about the songs that it just became like sing-along for days after that. Washington on Your Side, like echoing down the hallways, no one getting anything done. After that day, then it's on its trajectory. Like Hamilton is clearly like the buzzy show in New York, even though only a few hundred people have seen it. When they put the tickets on sale, this is true, they put the tickets on sale to the public theater members, it crashed the phones of the public theater because so many people wanted to buy tickets. If you work in the theater, you know then the part that comes next is really hard and really slow. It's a lot of rehearsals and design meetings and script conferences, and it's about making the 1,000 choices that you have to make to get anything on stage, whether it's good or lousy or a masterpiece. And they had to go through all those phases, all of them together. So at the end of all that process, it's opening night at the public theater, off-Broadway, the critics come. You know, we all think it's pretty cool at this point, but the critics, my former colleagues, are the ones who decide and tell their readers what they think of it. And the critics liked it, which was good, because once they liked it, then the path was clear for Hamilton to go to Broadway. That's when everybody knew, okay, so we have a hit that's downtown, we're gonna go uptown, it's gonna play this huge theater now, we have another chance to fix it and to make it its best possible form. That night, at the opening night party at the public theater, is when Lynn came up to me and said, there's gonna be a book about this show, you should write it. Again, nothing was obvious, nothing was foreordained. My response to that was, not really interested. I didn't want to write a book about Hamilton. I'd been around it. It was a great joy of my life to get to watch the thing happen, to be in the room for a lot of it. But, you know, there are these books, if you care about Broadway musicals, maybe you've seen them, you have one, these companion books, these coffee table books about Broadway shows. I didn't see how you could make one of those that would be fit to stand next to Hamilton, right? Like the bar was so high, like how do you get from one to the other? And even if you could, I wasn't sure that I wanted to do it, partly because by that point, I'm living here. I live in Chicago. I moved out here with my family while this show was being developed. And I had a book of my own that I was trying to finish, so there were just a lot of reasons why it didn't feel like the right fit. But I told Lynn I'd go away and think about it, and I went away and I thought about it. You know, spoiler, I ultimately said yes. Why did I say yes? If you care about writing, there's a book that you should read. It's called Finishing the Hat by Stephen Sondheim. It's Sondheim's account of how he came to write the songs in the first half of his career, in his shows. I should say West Side Story, Gypsy, Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum. His rules for writing in there are actually rules for life. Maybe all rules for writing are actually rules for life. But the first rule of writing he says in there is content dictates form. What he means is you need to decide what kind of story you're trying to tell when you sit down to write, and then you determine what is the best way to tell it. You can't prejudge going in how you're going to do something. You can't skip that step. So I said, all right, what is the story that you would tell in a book about Hamilton? After all I've seen over the years of this crazy phenomenon happening, what do you say about it? And it occurred to me that it's the story, Hamilton tells the story of a revolution, the American Revolution, right? From the beginning to the victory to, you know, people shooting each other on hilltops. And Hamilton is itself a revolution. It's changing the way that Broadway sounds. It's changing the way we think about the founding of the country. It's the part that I got to see that meant the most to me at that point. It's changing the lives of these young artists who are making it. I mean, a lot of these actors were not like high on people's call lists for roles. There were not a lot of roles that required the skill sets of people who were in Hamilton. But now, they go from not having agents to being highly regarded to suddenly being stars. And to watch that transformation happen, that revolution in their lives, that felt to me like a part of the story that I wanted to tell. So I thought maybe this is going to work, and the thing that finally made me confident that you could do it was two other books that are sort of like this. Not the other Broadway books. But I thought about Sondheim's Finishing the Hat, which is like he tells his stories, and then there are these annotated lyrics. And Jay-Z's book, Decoded, which is essentially the same book. He tells stories about his life, and then there are songs. I thought, if there's ever a show that should have Sondheim and Jay-Z as its parents, this is the one. So I had this image in my head, the thing that finally made it all click into place, is a rainbow, but with only two arcs. And one arc was going to be the show itself, from the first number to the finale. So the book was not going to have like the script tucked away at the back, the way a lot of Broadway books do. The show was going to be the book. But then the second arc on top of that was going to be the story of the creation of the show. Because Lynn performed his first song, the first time anyone saw any of this show in 2009, meant we could start right there. And I had a feeling, knowing Lynn, who likes to do his homework on the bus on the way to school, that he was going to be writing the duel, the end of the show, right up until opening night on Broadway. So that's where the story was going to end. So it'd begin at the beginning and end at the end, and somehow we'd have to get these two narrative lines to talk to each other. It was going to be a puzzle, but I like puzzles, and Sondheim likes puzzles, so we're doing this. So the summer of 2015, the show is getting ready to go to Broadway. There's all this buzz now. The actors are feeling pretty good because they've already had a hit downtown. People are excited. Lynn is fixing stuff. I had been around so much that I had a head start on trying to write this thing. And there's a moment in the book, I mean, it's not flagged in the book, but there's clearly a moment in the book where I stopped remembering stuff that I had seen, or people told me about it, and it's stuff that I was seeing for myself. When the company was moving into the theater on Broadway, this incident is in the book. The Room Where It Happens, it's a lot of people's favorite song, right? The Room Where It Happens. So imagine you're Lynn, you've composed this thing, you've heard it in your head for 5 years. You've heard it on a medium-sized set of speakers in a downtown theater. But now you get to hear it on a Broadway sound system. This incredibly powerful set of speakers in this huge, beautiful building. Well, the reason why I got that anecdote in the book about his reaction to it is because he was sitting right next to me at one of the tech tables when it happened. He had walked in with his, it's just what I put in the book. He walked in with his lunch, he sat down next to me. The sound designer, Devin Steinberg, flipped on these enormous refrigerator-sized subwoofers, and the band tore into that song. And so that reaction that Lynn had happened, I got it because it was right there, happening next to me. I think there's a lesson here. Like, if you want to write about something, you need to immerse in it. You just kind of need to be around. You need to have a dozen sets of eyes all the time to record every little incident that happens. It also meant that 5 days later, when President Obama came for the first time with his daughters and came on stage at intermission, I got to be there and hear what he said to the company. And something else is in the book. I saw him, I was watching him walk off stage, and I watched him sort of veer this way to grab one more hand before he left, and he wanted to talk to Anthony Ramos, who plays John Lawrence. Anthony has an incredible story. The guy grew up in a very rough part of New York. He needed people to believe in him and to take a chance on him to get out of where he started. He got his chance. He has made the most of it. And so, we were walking off stage together, and I asked him, what did the president say to you? And he said, his eyes were this big, and he said, you're really gifted. Which is like a beautiful moment in the life of this show. Another one of those little revolutions. So Lynn and I now, as it's getting close to opening night, have to figure out how are we actually going to tell this story? Like, how are we really going to put into this book now the stuff that I've been seeing and that he's been doing? And, when I've been talking about the story, there's a way that this could just mean like stuff in a timeline, like this happened and this happened and this happened. Tommy Kail was very sharp about this from the beginning of the show, when they were working on the show. The story is not just like stuff that happens. The story needs to have a shape. It needs to be the emotional experience that people have when they're going through stuff like this. It's the only way you could plot, you could find a narrative line through all the crazy stuff that happened in Alexander Hamilton's life. I thought this book should tell the story of what happened in the creation of the show from two perspectives. I thought I could write the chapters and the essays and the profiles and all that stuff, and I could sort of take the experience from when it hit the page to when it went on stage to when it went out into the world. So it's not just about how it happened, but like the impact that it had. But I could only get as far back as when it hit that paper. To go beyond that, that's where Lynn comes in. Because only Lynn knows where in his brain and his soul these things came from. Like, where did that guy come up with It's Quiet Uptown? Or Satisfied? Or My Shot? So he's the one that's going to have to tell that part of the story. And I thought he should tell it in the footnotes, in the annotations to the lyrics. So the moment by moment, we can see where this is coming from, how it's possible that this guy's coming up with all this stuff. We shouldn't take for granted, like, lots of people write smart shows, people write sad shows, people write funny shows. But for one guy to write a show that's all those things at 100% capacity is, like, mind-boggling. So the collaboration was tricky, but great. I think it was tricky because of our schedules. It was great because it's Lynn. He's a friend, so I'm biased, but if you have a chance to collaborate with Lin-Manuel Miranda, you should definitely do that. At that point, he's doing 7 shows a week. I'm living in Chicago. We both have toddlers, and we're running out of time. And the thing that I got to see in the show about the importance of people working together was just reprised in the book. If you want to work with people, you got to sort of agree at the beginning where you want to end up. You need a lot of trust. As Tommy says about working with his designers, you need the shorthand to be really short. It needed to be for us to write this book that was supposed to be 224 pages long, except that by the time we were done, it was actually 288 pages long, because it turns out it's Hamilton and there's a lot to say. I mean, would Alexander Hamilton have wanted us to write exactly the length, or would he have wanted us to go long? He would have wanted us to go long. We sent the book to the printer. 2 days before Christmas in 2015. I know because I celebrated being done by going to see Star Wars that night. This is The Force Awakens. If you've seen it, you know there's a Cantina song. Lynn wrote the Cantina song, so it was funny. Like, I celebrated the end of the collaboration with Lynn by more Lynn. And the one thing that I didn't get to put in the book, because it came after that date, but the one event that crystallizes the meaning of this show, helps me understand why people love it, was a visit that we got to make to the White House in early 2016. So it wasn't just Lynn and Alex Lacamoire this time, it was the full company. And they performed an hour's worth of songs from the show. And there are these moments when you can really see American history like all at once. That was one of those moments. Chris Jackson was performing One Last Time, which, if you know the show, is Washington's farewell address. It's the actual words of his farewell address. Lynn set them to music. He's performing this song at center stage, and behind him, on the wall, is the enormous 8 by 4 foot, I think, oil portrait of actual George Washington that Gilbert Stuart painted from life in 1796. So here's Chris Jackson, black man from Cairo, Illinois, singing the words of Washington's farewell address in front of actual Washington on the wall, Washington, who was a slave owner. Then, 6 feet in front of Chris on this side, is Barack Obama, the first black president, who said in, I think, his inaugural address, that he's a man whose father might not have been served at a lunch counter in Washington. All of American history felt like it was right there, within about 12 square feet. And so when I think about why people love this show and why it's so powerful, I think about the great pop songs, I think about the miraculous collaboration between Lynn, who does so many things so well, and his collaborators that are perfectly suited to what he wants to do. But I also think about how it gives us access to something bigger than ourselves. Leslie Odom Jr., who created the role of Burr, told me that he'd always felt remote from American history. It hadn't felt like his story. But after playing Burr and spending time trying to imaginatively connect with these people, it felt real to him. Daveed Diggs told me that if he had seen, when he was a teenager in Oakland, getting pulled over by the cops for no reason, George Washington or Thomas Jefferson being played by a black man, more things would have seemed possible in his life. There's just stories, right? Like, what's the big deal? The big lesson I have, the reason why I think we love it so much, is because it reminds us that stories matter. Stories confer dignity. When you get to tell your story, you have agency in the world. When you listen to someone else's story, it's a sign of respect. This is a very horribly divided country right now in a lot of ways. But I think we will patch it up one day because of the stories that we'll tell each other. You know, normally when I talk to groups about Hamilton, they're usually adults. And I always say to them something that I have believed for a long time to be true, that the real revolution, the way that the changes that are going to matter most that come out of this show are going to come from the generation that grows up with it, who take it as part of their original encounter with the founding. And so I say, we'll see what they come up with, how they're inspired, the way they're liberated by this crazy show that somehow breaks every rule and is great. But the they is not they this morning, the they is you, because you guys are the people that I'm talking about. I have seen every phase, almost every phase of the creation of the show. I'm very excited to see the phase that is yours. Thank you. Are there any questions? Maybe you can have a little light, and please raise your hand, and I'll try to find you.
Actually, know the words. I'm not kidding.
What's my favorite? What's your favorite song from Hamilton? Satisfied. Good choice. My favorite song when I'm watching it is Dream Where It Happens, because I think Andy Blankenbuehler's choreography is incredible. But when I'm listening, it's always Helpless, just because I remember Lynn singing Eliza in falsetto back in 2011, and it's still the greatest. Other questions? Yes, up there. Yeah, you. Yeah. Have I anything on stage myself? Yeah, I mean, when I was at the Public Theater, that whole series, Public Forum was a series I created. We would do performances of plays that I thought had some special relevance. So we would, I'd direct these readings, and then we'd have these conversations. The charm of of theater is that the collaboration is the best part. And so some of the happiest memories I have are being like your age or being in college and putting on plays with my friends. Other questions? Yes? Will they ever make it into a movie? I don't know, but why wouldn't they, right? I mean, because it's not just that it's great, but like all these like fancy directors have come to see it and they've loved it, so they've got to be having ideas already about what they do with it if they got the chance. I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon, but I'd be surprised if we didn't see it at some point. Other questions? Here's one right here, and then up top. Go ahead.
45.
45. Up top? Listen, I don't know when the next casting call is for Chicago, but stay tuned. Any other questions? Yes, right here. Yes, the question is, have I seen the Chicago production? Yes, I have seen it. It's fantastic. I mean, you think about how difficult it is to step into roles that